In today's episode, a 78-year-old Florida man beat his wife of 55 years for the dumbest reason. Tune in to find out why. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to your Florida Man Friday. If you are new here, my name is Kai, and this is Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, the Friday edition. Before we begin, I want to remind you that this episode and all my episodes are sponsored by my lambs and Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. If you want to be a sponsor of Love and Murder and just keep the episodes flowing, keep it getting better and better, then head on over to patreon.com/Love and Murder and become an exclusive lamb. Let's get into this Florida Man Friday. At 2:42 p.m. on April 12, 2024, police responded to a home on the 8th Avenue in Largo, Florida, for a domestic abuse incident. When police arrived at the residence, they described the living room as, quote, having things tossed around as if from a struggle. The victim, 78-year-old Annie Davis, quote, had a cut on her nose and a cut on her left eye, as well as, quote, a contusion to the back right of her head that was visibly red. Police had her transported to a nearby hospital for medical evaluation. When police asked her what happened, quote, the victim advised that this had started because the defendant wanted to drive their car, but she did not allow him to because he was not supposed to drive. Police went to interview 78-year-old Walter Lee Davis and read him his Miranda rights. Walter said, yeah, I don't want to hear all that. You can stop talking now. I don't want to hear that. So he waived his Miranda rights and he said he wasn't going to speak to any police. While talking to Walter, police noticed that he, quote, had dried blood on his left leg, but did not have any other injuries. Police had also been told that while his wife was calling 911, the dispatcher could hear Walter in the background saying, quote, shut up and stop it. So even though Walter was not talking to police, police still arrested him based on the physical evidence, based on the recording from the 911 call, and based on what his wife was saying. So later, the entire story came out. And what happened was that Walter had started beating his wife in the head. His wife, who he had been married to for 55 years. He had started beating her in the head and in the face because, like she said, she refused to let him drive the car. Now, when Walter was booked into the Pinellas County Jail, police noticed that he had no prior criminal or even traffic records. But he was booked into the jail with no bond, and he was charged with 1 count of battery on a person over the age of 65. However, I do see here that on April 13th, he was released on a $2,500 bond. And as a condition of his bond, he was not allowed to have any direct or indirect contact with his wife. He still faces a maximum sentence of up to 5 years in prison if convicted as presently charged. And that is the case of a man who just wanted to drive and his wife wouldn't let him. Maybe his license was suspended. Maybe he couldn't see properly and his wife was trying to help him out. And he was like, I'm not having any of this. I just want to go for a Sunday drive. And he decided to become violent with his wife. Now, I'm wondering if this was the onset of Alzheimer's, because, you know, some Alzheimer's patients get really, really violent. So I'm wondering if it was the start of Alzheimer's or, because, I mean, if he never beat her before, or maybe he did and she just never reported it, I think this needs to be looked more into. Is he a habitual abuser? Is this the first time he's ever done this? Because if this is the first time, then we need to figure out why, instead of just putting him in prison, because it could be the onset of dementia or Alzheimer's. But if he's done this quietly before and this is the first time ever she's called, then yeah, prison. So what do y'all think? And the poll question for this story is, do you believe that domestic violence incidents should result in mandatory counseling and intervention programs for both the victim and the perp? Let me know what you think. Now, as I remind you, in any case like this, if you are experiencing domestic violence, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233, 1-800-799-7233, or you can go to thehotline.org. All calls are toll-free and confidential, and it is open 24/7 in more than 170 languages. Please get someone to talk to, get help now. I know it's not easy to say just leave, but at least talk to somebody. And in last week's Florida Man Friday, it was the case of Alexander Roque, who confessed to killing his girlfriend and drove to the police station with her body in the car. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that now. That was a crazy case. And the question that I asked is, should people who confess to a violent crime and turn themselves in receive a reduced sentence as part of a plea deal? And Juliet says, yes, for saving taxpayer time and money. And they must include the location of the body, though. Which I told her that I don't agree with this, because then people who don't have any remorse, like sociopaths, serial killers, they'll just kill, give the location, get a life sentence, kill again, get the location, get a light sentence, and, rinse and repeat. So I don't agree with that. Hannah Page says, it depends on what the crime is. I can't remember if it was your podcast or not, but there was an episode I listened to where the guy killed his first wife, pled guilty, got out after a really light sentence because his pastor and everything backed him up, married the pastor's daughter, and then killed her. So that episode, I need to do a Kai Rants on that one, or maybe a full episode. I'm not sure. I have to look up the case first. And I'm going to end up doing an episode on that one because, oh my God. So you can go back and listen to that episode. It's called Man Murders Girlfriend, Drives to Police Station with Body in the Car. And then answer that question. Should people who confess to violent crimes and turn themselves in receive a reduced sentence as part of the plea deal? I want to hear from you. And really quickly, I want to bring you another case that started in New York but ended in Florida. On February 10th, 2009, police were called to a home on Green Avenue in New York at around 2:15 p.m. When they got to the house, they encountered what literally they called a bloodbath. There was blood on the walls, there was blood on the floor, and they found a man laying face down in a pool of his own blood in the hallway. The man turned out to be 64-year-old Rosario Prestigiacomo. I probably said that completely wrong. He had been stabbed 16 times in the face, neck, torso, and everywhere else. And he also suffered wounds to his lungs, his esophagus, his abdomen, and his chest. Police also saw that he had blunt force injuries to his torso, his arms, legs, his head. Just basically, he was stabbed and beaten everywhere. So investigators collected blood swabs from the location, and the medical examiner's office was able to match a DNA profile to the victim, and they were able to match a DNA profile to a second question mark person who they thought was the attacker, who might have been hurt or bleeding. Investigators ran the DNA through local, state, and national systems, but nothing came up at the time. So the case went cold. Then in March of 2022, the Queens District Attorney and the NYPD's Cold Case Unit looked for help from a private lab and the Department of Homeland Security to try and find anybody. Can you give me anything? So they used forensic genetic genealogy. Remember, we just talked about this in another case where the guy went free. This was a True Crime Tuesday, if I remember correctly, and it was the case of Christopher Tapp. They used the same forensic genealogy to help him get free after 20 years in prison and find the correct person who did the crime. Go back and listen to that. That just happened. I think it was this week, actually, True Crime Tuesday. So you don't have to look very far, the case of Christopher Tapp. So with the help of Homeland Security and the forensic genetic genealogy, in a few months, the lab was able to make an advanced genealogical profile from the suspect's blood that had been left at the scene. They then uploaded that profile into public databases and used that information to also make a family tree to identify possible suspects or even the suspect's relatives. So in 2023, late in 2023, they got a potential lead and turned it over to the NYPD's Cold Case Unit. That led to a man named Anthony Scalise, who was actually the nephew of Rosario. Anthony was now living in Boynton Beach in Florida. So with the help of Boynton Beach police and the NYPD, they put Anthony under surveillance. The reason why they were surveying him was because they did want to get a sample of his DNA to be able to match it to the DNA that was at the crime scene. So they were just waiting for him to discard DNA, which is the same thing that happened in the Christopher Tapp case. So on February 7th, 2024, they were able to retrieve a fork that he had thrown away. And with that fork, there was a DNA profile that matched the unknown DNA profile recovered from underneath the victim's fingernails. It also matched the unknown male DNA profile that had been developed from the blood evidence that was left at the scene. So Anthony was arrested in Boynton Beach and extradited right back to New York to face charges. Anthony is currently 41 years old, and he was arrested on the charges of second-degree murder. I wonder why second degree? Well, I guess because they don't know why it happened. So right now, he didn't say if he was guilty or not guilty. He hasn't said if he is guilty, why he did this. So we don't know the motives of this. And we don't even know if he has an attorney yet. So I will keep you updated on this case as well. And that is all I have for you for this Florida Man Friday. Don't forget to share this episode, share with your friends, share with your family, share with everybody you know and everybody you don't. Hit that share icon right now, even while I'm talking, and share. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a lamb, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.